Today I'm going to show you guys how to make letters from tree branches, which is actually a lot cooler than it sounds. Hey guys, welcome to Flirt. My name is Aaron Nace. You can find me on Twitter at AKNacer. Today we're doing something really cool. We're taking an image by David, who won our contest from last week, and we're actually going to be making some letters out of the tree branches in this image. It's not like a super easy thing to do. It's going to take quite a bit of time. Not forever, maybe 20 minutes or so, but it's going to be a really, really cool effect. I'm going to show you guys a lot of great techniques along the way. So let's go ahead and get into it. We got a lot to do, and we're going to have some fun today. All right, so we've got this image by David, and it looks great. It's just like the light shining through from the trees. Everything about this is really, really cool. And maybe you've seen posters like from movies like Big Fish, where they kind of spelled out letters in, the tree branches, and you said, maybe I want to do that myself. So we're going to just do that here in Photoshop. Let's create a new layer, and we're going to spell the word hope, because most of the images you see on the internet have like hope or love or something like that written in them, and they get spread all over Tumblr, and everyone loves that sort of crap. So we're just going to do that today as well. I shouldn't say crap. It's a beautiful love story. I love it. Okay, so we're going to spell out hope. So we've got this guy here that kind of looks like the top of an E, right? So this is like E, something like that, and there's an E right there. We're going to put a P right there. We'll put an O right there, and then maybe we can spell out an H right there. So we're going to make these tree branches look like they spell hope. Now, you don't want to make this look perfect. You don't want to make it look like, Times New Roman font, because it's supposed to be made out of tree branches. So we got a lot of things to do in order to go ahead and make this happen. So first thing we're going to kind of figure out is like, where can we put the tree branches? How can we like warp things around and move things around to like actually get them in place? Well, let's just talk about a little bit of a strategy to start with. Let's just create a new layer, and I'm going to create just another color here. And we've got hope here. I'm going to move this guy right here, this little tree branch, and I'm going to try to push it over to where it's going to be to make up the tall letter, or whatever this is called, from the P. For this, we can just create another branch that just connects those. We can get rid of some of these other branches and things like that. So this guy right here, we're going to push over there. This little branch over there, I'm going to push over to the left. And we're going to just go ahead and start off with that and see what it does. So we're just kind of like sketching these out, and then we're going to go ahead and work on the images. Let's make those invisible. Now I do want to just create a background copy. I'm going to hit Command J on my background layer, and that's just going to make sure I'm not messing with my original background layer, because I'm going to do like a liquify filter, and I just want to make sure I've got my original back how it was to start with. So we're going to go to Filter, and down here to Liquify. There we go. Let's just zoom in, hit the Command plus key a couple times. We'll just change our brush size quite a bit. All right, bring our size back down. There we go. And now what we're going to do is basically, we said we're going to try to make this into the P for the tall part of the P. So I'm going to push this over just a little bit until it's kind of like standing more straight up. And if you do push over, one part of your image, make sure you start pushing over other parts as well. And that's just going to make things look a little bit more natural. All right, so that's going to do pretty decent for a P. Let's just go ahead and push this over, and this could be an H. Now we're working with an image in this case that is relatively low resolution. It's just we got this image from a contest, so it's not like a full 20 megapixel image. In that case, we're going to get a little bit of like artifacts. It's going to look a little bit sloppy here where we do use Liquify. Let's hit OK there. So you can see it's going to look a little bit sloppy. We can clone stamp that and work with that later if we need to. But that's just going to be, if you had a higher resolution image to begin with, it wouldn't look that sloppy when you're actually doing this. Okay, so let's get our sketch back. We've got our hope there. Let's go ahead and start with the E. We're going to go ahead and start with something that's pretty easy. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to hit Command G to group that together, and we're just going to double click on this and call it E. So that's going to be our E group. Now in this, we're going to start off by using a clone stamp tool. So S for the clone stamp tool, and then we're going to hold Alt or Option and sample from a point outside where you want to go ahead and paint it. And we're going to paint away some of these things that are just a little bit distracting here. Like this other tree branch doesn't really need to be there. I don't feel it does. So let's go ahead and we can make our, there we go, this is our sketch of what everything's going to look like. We can make that invisible. There we go. And we're just going to start off by clone stamping out. So we know we want our, there we go, we want this to kind of like look like it's coming out there. And this guy create that other form of the E. So this branch here is just going to be a little distracting. So I'm going to hold Alt or Option and then sample up there, and we're just going to clone stamp that branch out too. Now, it's not going to be that difficult, especially in areas like this where you're just clone stamping basically white from the background. It's just going to be a lot easier because you don't have to worry about detail and things like that. So it makes our job nice and easy. All right, and if we want to just like build it up a little bit there, we can do that as well. All right, our clone stamp tool is going to be our best friend when we're doing this. Love you, clone stamp. Yeah. All right, we can get rid of this layer here. There we go. We've got our E, and we just need another branch that's going to kind of come right down there. So we have a couple of options there. I can try to clone stamp this branch and bring it down, or we could try to like bring in another branch. The one thing you're going to notice is the branch that's kind of like going to come from down below needs to be a little bit darker because we have a light branch here because everything's kind of coming through the light. You can see that backlit there. Down here it's going to need to be a little bit darker. So we can either try to clone stamp. Let's clone stamp this guy over here. Why not? It'll be fun. So a new layer, S for the clone stamp tool. I'm going to sample over here, and then I'm just going to paint right over here like that, and it's going to go, I'm going to follow it up a little bit. It's totally fine. There we go. Now, this is on a new layer, right? So when I'm using clone stamp, I'm making sure to select all layers here. It's going to sample all the layers so I can move this around and it's on its own layer. Pretty cool. I'm going to hit Command T and we're just going to rotate that around. Let's go ahead and make sure it fits with our original vision of hope here. Here we go. Let's make that a little bit smaller. Maybe hit Command T and stretch it out a little bit. There we go. Let's make that invisible there. And we can see it's blending in relatively nicely. There are a couple things we're going to do. We're going to put a layer mask on there, and I'm going to go ahead and paint black on my layer mask so we can mask out just the tree branch there. There we go. Looking pretty good. Now, we do want to do a couple things to make sure it actually blends in. You can see it's not really blending in very well here. It's too light here and it's too dark there. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make what's called a clipping mask, and that's going to affect just what's on this layer. So this is a pretty complex tutorial if you haven't realized already, but we're going to make a clipping mask, and I'm going to make a new layer. Option Command G is going to clip that layer, or I can right click and go to create clipping mask. And whatever I put on this layer, let's just pretend I grab a pink paintbrush. I'm going to paint all over it, and whatever I put on it now is only going to be visible where this layer is visible because it's clipped to that layer. Alright, so here we're going to just make things seem like they fit a little bit more. So we're going to use our clone stamp tool, S for the clone stamp tool, and I'm just going to clone stamp in from from this tree right over here, and we're just going to clone stamp right over top of our limb here. And it's just going to make everything like blend a little bit more. It's just going to like be really happy and nice and beautiful. There we go. We're going to do the same thing from over here. Now this is on a new layer, but it's only visible where the underlying layer is visible. So that's the trick there. Use your clipping masks, and that's going to make everything kind of like talk together nicely. All right, there we go. And we'll paint that on there. There we go. So that's an E for the hope. Not too bad, right? We went from that to that, and you can see it gets lighter into the darker because we're just taking cues from the original trees that were already there. Let's create a new layer, again with our clone stamp tool, sampling again on all layers, and I'm going to get rid of that guy right there because we don't need you. I don't want you. Get out of here. There we go. So now we've created an E, and this is totally up to you, but you know, we've gone from that to that, and it's going to look pretty good. So there's our E for the hope, and we're following our original sketch, which is, you know, that's what we want our E to look like. So that's what we're going to make the E look like. All right, let's create a new layer. Just Command G will group that layer with itself, and I'm going to call this P. So this is going to be our P layer. Now, I didn't move this over all the way, so our P is just going to be shifted over just a little bit. And now we need to figure out a way to like make that curvature. Well, you can do this in a number of ways. I could basically take the trees branches that are here and kind of take those away. All right, so we'll make a new layer. I'm going to hit S for the clone stamp tool, and then we're going to clone stamp this away. There we go. Again, right from here, because it's just a little bit distracting. We don't need it, right? We just want to create the P. We don't need any of this stuff here to get in our way. All right, let's just turn that back on, and we want something to kind of like come up and around there. So I'm going to get rid of this tree branch as well. All right, and with this sort of thing, just like basically anything else in Photoshop, your result is going to vary depending on how much time and energy you spend on this. Like if you just do this super quick and you don't care about it, it's probably not going to turn out that great. But if you spend a good deal of time and like really start like caring about it and put your all into it, you're going to get something that's really great. So that's what I would suggest doing, is like evaluating how important it is for you to get something that's actually good, and then you can see your result from there. So if you do want to create a great product, just devote a little bit of time to it, and it's going to come out a lot better. So we're going to create a new layer, and this is a nice little curvature up here. I'm going to clone stamp that all the way right over here on a new layer. So S for our clone stamp tool there. There we go. And I'm going to hit Command T, right click, and say flip horizontal. There we go. So this is going to make up part of our P. Command T, and then we'll just kind of like squish it down and around there. All right, so we're kind of following our P there. That just sounds funny when you say following your P. We're going to create a duplicate, hit flip horizontal, and then we've got another one right there as well. All right, on this one, let's create a layer mask, and we can just paint black on a layer mask because we don't really need that there. And then on a new layer right above this, I'm just going to clone stamp this because it looks like it's the same thing from top to bottom, because it is. But clone stamping is just going to help out, like, you know, make it look like it's actually, you know, like slightly different variants from one to the other. There we go. And you can just do this right on top of everything here. You don't have to stay very, you don't have to stay very well organized, really. Make a couple, like, branches. Like, you could clone stamp here and, like, make a couple, like, branches, like, you know, oh, that's going to come out of there, and that's, you know, that's going to come out there, and just do whatever you want, just to make it look like it's not completely photoshopped. Okay. So we've gone from that right to there. There we go. And this is a tutorial. So obviously I'm not going to spend an hour doing this, but if you guys wanted to spend longer, you could totally do that. So there's our P. So it really helps to start off with a sketch. Let's go back to this H and see how we're going to do this. The reason I'm skipping the O is because that's going to be a little bit more difficult. So I want to get the H in place, and then we'll be good to go. All right, so we'll just call this H, and then I'm going to build this in. Now, I can choose to, if I wanted to liquefy that a little bit more, I could definitely do that. But I don't think that's necessary in this case. I would just want to get rid of some of this background stuff. I want to make this H like a, basically going from this little log tree thing here over to this one. So that's going to be the vertical part of each of the H's. I don't really know typefaces that well. I know there's actually a technical name for the vertical part of a certain piece of font, but I don't know what it is. If you guys know, please let me know. If you guys are graphic designers out there, I would love to know. You know, I think it's like vertical bars, or who knows. But if you do know, leave it in a comment down below. I would love to know, so I don't sound as ignorant when I'm doing this. But after all, I'm teaching Photoshop here, not type theory, so take it for what it is. There we go. Okay, so there we've got the makings for an H. This is going to come up there and connect on over there. Now this looks pretty good over here. This is like a nice even horizontal bar. So I'm going to hit S for the clone stamp tool, sample that right there, and we're just going to paint that right across from there, just like that. Now if you get this white in the area, which you probably will get, you're going to want to put a layer mask on there, and then paint black on your layer mask just where that white is, and that's just going to make sure that white area disappears and you're left with just your tree branch. Alright, so there's our H. Alright, that looks pretty good. It could look probably a little bit better. Let's see what we could do to clean it up. Maybe just bring this all the way down here. There we go. Yeah, that's probably what I would do. Just bring that all the way down. Make it look like, oh yeah, that tree just goes all the way down there, doesn't it? There we go, and we can clean this up. We're kind of getting ready for our O as well. Beautiful. And you can take as much time as you want with this sort of stuff. There's no rules. It's just Photoshop. We're creating hope from some random scattering of tree branches here. There's definitely no rules when you do that sort of stuff. All right, I just don't want to make it perfect, so I'm going to hit the clone stamp tool, and I'm going to kind of build in a little bit of I'm just going to do this with my paintbrush. It's going to build in a little bit of variance to make it look like, oh, maybe it's just not, maybe there's a stick that comes up there or something like that. There we go. Just make it a little bit less. Looks like I've tried to do that perfectly. There we go. And we'll clone stamp that guy away as well. All right, so if you guys had any questions on the clone stamp tool, it's probably a pretty good episode for you. All right, so now our O, we can see there's our creating the H. Our O, we want to create up there. I'm going to see, maybe I could use that. We're going to see what we can do. A new layer, I'm going to group that with itself, and we're just going to double click here and name that O. We can get rid of this all together up top there. Why not? So again, we're gonna go with the clone stamp tool and just get rid of that. There we go. Get rid of this whole thing. And you can see I'm sampling from all kinds of places. I'm sampling over here. I just don't want it to look like a giant blur of clone stamp. Like this, there's not enough detail in there for you to actually believe that that's what it looks like in the background. Because it's just like a giant blur, right? So you can sample from other places. Like if I wanted to sample this, I could even bring in some some background or whatever I wanted to. You'd have to make it a little bit brighter if you wanted to do that, but just to make it look like it's, it's not just like a giant blur color. That's basically going to be your goal. All right, so we've got our H looking good. That little thing that I put up there looks pretty bad, to be honest. So we're just gonna get rid of that. There we go. And again. Okay, so now we just need to make an O and figure out how we're gonna do this. So let's see. We want this to be relatively light colored. We could kind of cheat and just use what we got in the P. Let's see about doing that. Because why not? All right. So we'll create a new layer, and I'm going to hit S for the clone stamp tool. And the only thing I worry about when doing this is that we've really got just basically the same thing, just to the right of this. So it's the probability of this looking like you just kind of clone stamped exactly what was over there is relatively high. What we're going to do is I'm going to hit Command L. It's going to bring our levels, and we're just going to make it a little bit darker, so it's going to look less like I just copied what was right over there. I also flipped it. You can see that it's, instead of going off to the right, it's going to be going up and down now. It's a little too saturated too, so I'm going to hit Command U on this. There we go, and we're just going to lower our saturation. All right. That happens sometimes when you change your light or dark levels. It'll mess with your saturation too. Something which I really wish it didn't do that, but hey, it happens. If you want to avoid that, you can switch to LAB mode, but that's just a whole other can of worms. We're going to change this from normal down to darken as well, and that's just going to get rid of those light spots too. I'm going to hit Command J, Command T, and then go to flip vertical, and then I'm going to flip this horizontally as well. And there we go. That's our O for you. Looking pretty good. Now let's go ahead and clone stamp. Just make sure this all blends in, right? Because we don't want it to look like it's just a weird shape there. So I'm hitting S for the clone stamp tool and kind of sampling from the darker area going into the lighter area. There we go. And we're just going to do the same thing up here. And you can clone stamp here, which is what I'm doing in this case, or you can just grab a brush tool. And for this, let's just zoom out. We can see that, yeah, it spells hope there. Pretty cool. Not exactly where we decided it was going to be, but it definitely does spell hope, which is very, very cool. Now what I would probably do is create a new layer. We'll just group that with itself, and we'll just call this refine. There we go. And this is where I would probably just come in with a brush tool at 30 or 40% and just kind of figure out, okay, this is, my brush tool. I would just want to grab this color here and then paint some dark areas over there. And the key to this is really just to hold Alt or Option and sample a bunch of times, sample a darker color, kind of bring that in here and then paint that in. This is going to give you a good amount of variance, because you don't want to just grab one color and then paint like that. It's going to look horrible, right? So grab a color, make your brush nice and small, and then just kind of paint with a bunch of variance. Grab another color there, There we go. And it's just going to look a lot more natural. All right, there we go. So we need to thicken these letters up a little bit. That's the consensus. Thicken those letters up. Make them look better. All right. Cool. And then, you know, like you get stuff like this, right? So we want like little things that'll kind of like join one thing to the other. Like it's not going to be a perfect like P or whatever, right? You want to make it still look like it's maybe got a little bit of reality going on there. This would probably just continue up, right? Because it's, you know, it's like a tree. So let's do that. All right, and all this stuff you can do with the clone stamp tool. I just happen to be doing with the brush tool because it's just another way to show you guys how to do this sort of thing. There we go. All right, this is looking great. All right, let's create a new layer, and again, we're just going to grab our clone stamp tool, and I'm going to clone stamp in, you know, up there. It's like, you know, oh, it would do that, wouldn't it? I don't know. I don't know what it would do. What'd it do? I don't. Just being really silly right now. Okay, so that looks just a little bit more natural. Let's go ahead and zoom out and see what we've got there. Let's see, that's about 100% zoom right there. So definitely looking a little bit better when you go ahead and refine these things in there. If you want your edges to be a little bit sharper, just make a smaller brush, and then you can just kind of paint with, use your clone stamp tool or paint, but use a really small hard edge brush. So I would use like a flow of about 90, and that's just going to make sure the edges are nice and hard there, and it's going to make it look a lot less like you just did, you know, you just grabbed a brush tool, because your edges are going to be very well defined. All right. There we go. That's the important stuff when you're doing this sort of thing. All right. Now, if we want to get rid of this original area where I kind of like, let's just create a new layer. We're going to use the clone stamp tool and just kind of paint right back in there, because this is the areas where I just kind of grabbed. There we go, and liquefied it around, if you remember. So I'm just using the clone stamp tool to kind of like blotch some new texture and some new detail in there. All right, this is fun. It's just like, you know, you get to be like artistic or whatever, you know, you just have fun with it. There's no rules when you're doing this sort of thing. Of course, it's just like whatever you want to do. Have fun with it. All right, here we go. So there we go. It spells hope. Let's just darken this up a little bit there. Sampling colors that are, you know, like pretty close to where this would be, as far as like, you know, it's going to be that color right over here, which I didn't really mess with that. So it's probably going to be a similar color right over there. There we go. Pretty cool. So just refining it up is just going to make it look a little bit more natural. All right, and there we have it spells hope. So let's just shift click all those layers, hit Command G, and let's look at our before and after. So that's our before, and there's our after, and it spells hope. And it looks, you know, you can still see that it spells hope. I don't want to get rid of everything else around there, because then it's just kind of like, you know, it'll look totally Photoshop. But having people have to look for it a little bit is definitely really cool. There's only one thing I'll probably do. Just grab a levels adjustment layer. I'm going to go down to my green channel, and I'm going to pull in a little bit of greens here in my shadows. It's just going to like pull our shadows towards the green and pull our highlights towards magenta just a little bit. There we go. And we'll pull our red channel, and let's just put a little bit more reds, and then we're going to pull a little more yellows in our highlights, just to like color tone this just a bit. There we go. And we'll just lower the opacity. There we go. So we can see a little more details in our shadows. And there we go. Well, you know what? I'm going to do one more thing, just because I like playing around. It's Photoshop. We're going to pull down our blue channel. I'm going to pull up our red channel just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to hit Command I, and then we're just going to grab our marquee tool and select right around the center there. Hit Command I on that as well. And then we're going to go to Filter, Blur, and over here to Gaussian Blur. That's just going to give us like a nice blur in that center there. It's going to like, well, there we go. I'm just going to use a brush to do this because I think I blurred it way too much because this image is rather small. I'm just going to pull some like yellow in there. There we go. We can see pulling some yellow in there is just a little bit nice. So there's before the adjustments and then after. Oh, we got our hope. So that's it, guys. Very, very cool. So here's our original image. Nothing wrong with it. It's awesome already, but it doesn't say hope in the tree branches, and now it does. There we go. Thanks so much for watching Flurn, guys. That's the end of this tutorial. I hope you had a great time. Go out and make funny letters and funny words out of whatever you want to now. Just use the clone stamp tool and make sure you sample from the areas that are around your image so you can kind of keep the light and the dark consistencies. Thanks again, guys. I'll Flurn you later. Bye, everyone.